Mia.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm fine. It's so good to see you. And thank you.
Good to see you too.
And thank you for joining us today for Cultured Focus Magazine.
You're welcome.
I am pleased to have you. And just to tell our guest, first, welcome to Cultured Focus Magazine. Our special guest today is Mia Edwards, and she is a licensed social worker from Indianapolis, Indiana. And she is joining us as part of our Voices of Hope series to discuss the increased incidence of domestic violence during the coronavirus lockdown period, what she has seen in her practice, as well as how women and men can be better helped during this challenging time. So thank you all for joining us, and we are glad that Mia has agreed to join us today. So Mia.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So before we get started, tell us about you and how long you've been in the field practicing with social.
Okay. I've been in the field, it's been over 20 years. I started in 2001 in mental health. And I worked in mental health for about 5 years and went back and got my master's in social work.
Excellent.
And I've been postgraduate for over 10 years now. So almost 20 years in the social service area.
Wow, very experienced. And the demographics of the population that you see mainly, I would assume is women mostly, but then some men. Tell us about that.
As far as domestic violence, right?
Yes.
Okay. So as far as that, yes, majority has been women, but it's been a trend in the last 2 to 3 years that we're seeing more men. And I think that it's been more accepted now. You know, the stigma is still a stigma on men to come forward, but I think that just the way society is going, I think that men are seeking out help more, and same-sex relationships, because we've seen an increase in same-sex relationships of domestic violence also.
Oh, wow.
And teens also. So we try to do a lot of outreach with teens, because there's been an increase in teen violence between couples also.
Okay. So for the men, and not necessarily increased incidents that we know of, but just more comfortable reporting it and coming.
More comfortable, yes, more comfortable reporting it. Because even when I talk to some of my men now, it's still a sort of a stigma, and people around them still kind of tease them a little bit for going to seek help, but they're at the point where they know they need help, and they're not going to listen to what other people say now, and not let other people shame them. So now they're reaching out more.
Good. That's good. And as well as teens, I imagine you touched on that you see as well.
Yes, we're doing a lot of outreach for teens, because that population seems to be really growing at a far bigger rate. We don't know why. We don't know, if it's, societal, media. We don't know, but a lot of teen domestic violence has really increased. And so we've been doing a lot of outreach where I work at the moment. We've been doing a lot of outreach of trying to get to the teens and going to the schools and talking about dating violence. Good. And, I think March or February, I can't remember which month, but one of those were teen violence month. So domestic violence networks all reached out to
Okay.
schools and the community to try to do seminars on that
Mm-hmm.
for teens can know what to look for.
And what is a healthy relationship? Because
Mm-hmm.
religion, like you said, there may not be, who knows what the factors are, but there may be a number of factors that play a role, certainly
Yes,
in
yes, it's
society.
a number of factors.
And so,
And generational, that's a little aspect. We don't have to go all the way in, but
mhm,
generational domestic violence,
as well.
where the kids grew up in that environment, and so they thought it was okay. They think
Mhm,
that's the way that you uh
mhm.
that's the way that you interact with your partner.
Okay.
So to them, they don't know they're doing something that is not right, or they just feel like, well, this is right because this is the way my parents interacted with each other.
They
Yeah.
don't
So
either.
there's some generational abuse, domestic abuse.
As well. Okay. Well, that's one of the things and reasons why we wanted to bring this topic to light during this time period.
Mm-hmm.
Coronavirus, we've seen, two key points. Not only that there were key measures put into place to protect
Mm-hmm.
us from, as far as social distancing, sheltering in place,
Mm-hmm.
restricted travel, and closures, you know, but closures of key facilities
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
throughout the country, and that has led to an increased risk for family violence, not only in the U.S.,
Yes.
but around the globe. And
Right.
certainly, as a second point, the closure of facilities,
Mm-hmm.
schools and libraries and churches, those support systems that are normally
Mm-hmm.
there are not readily accessible. That has raised the challenge, certainly, I'm sure, for you, and social workers throughout the U.S.
Yes. And my fellow counselors, we were really, really concerned about that issue because, you know, the major shelters, that's the biggest ones in the city, had to shut down
Mm.
in March, all the way shut down and not accept any new clients. So we were all concerned about that because
Mhm.
we were just like, okay, what are they going to do? Who are they going to go to if all the shelters are closed? Where
Yep.
are they going to seek help?
Yep.
And like you said, churches and all that. So, and then also with the shutdown, they're isolated.
Yes.
So they're not around friends. They can't tell friends, so we were very, very concerned about this issue.
Speak a little bit about power and control, and how that plays a role in domestic violence. I understand the National Center for Domestic Violence has some information that you wanted to share with our viewers.
So first, let me define an unhealthy relationship.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Relationships that are not healthy are based on power and control, not equality and respect. In the early stages of an abusive relationship, you may not think the relationship is unhealthy at the time, and that it's not a big deal. But possessiveness, insults, jealousy, and accusations, yelling, humiliation, pulling hair, pushing, or other negative abusive behaviors are at the root of the power and control. There are 5 characteristics of an unhealthy relationship. It's physical,
Mm-hmm.
emotional, verbal, sexual, financial, and nowadays with the 20th century, um, digital. So a lot of times the abuser has been using Facebook, social media, putting naked pictures or inappropriate pictures of the victim online for everyone to see. So it's a lot of humiliation tactics that they use and intimidation. And so with the physical, it could be hitting, slapping, choking, kicking, grabbing, pulling hair, and pushing and shoving.
Okay, then let me zoom in on the power and control wheel, just so the viewer
Mm-hmm.
can also see
Can
what
see it. Yes.
you're alluding to as you reference it there.
Yes.
Coercive threats, taking and carrying out threats to do something,
Mm-hmm.
hurt herself, commit suicide, or report her to welfare, making her drop charges, making her do illegal things.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So the coercion and threats is a big one. Intimidation is the big one.
Emotional abuse, as well as we allude
Mm-hmm.
to, putting her down, making her feel bad about herself, calling
Mm-hmm.
her names, making her think she's crazy, playing
Mm-hmm.
games, humiliating her, and making her feel guilty. As far as isolation, as we scroll down, controlling what she does, who she sees and talks to, she goes, limiting her outside involvement, using jealousy to justify actions, then minimizing and denying and blaming, such as
Mm-hmm.
light of the abuse and not making her concerns about it seriously, saying
Mm-hmm.
the abuse didn't happen, shifting
Yes.
responsibility for abusive behavior and saying she caused it. Then also using the children, making her
Mm-hmm.
guilty about the children, using the children
Yes.
to relay messages, using
Yes.
visitation
That's a big one. Yes.
and threatening to take the children away. That this here is a big one. You wanted to.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because along with the emotional,
Mm-hmm,
using the children and the emotional, which can go hand in hand, with the emotional, yes, it's putting her down and making her feel that no one else no one else loves her, no one else will want her. And then using the kids saying that, if you leave me, then I'm gonna make sure you don't even get the kids, and I'm gonna fight you for custody. And
mm-hmm,
and it has happened. I have several clients that's going through custody battles right now
mm-hmm,
because of that, because of the perpetrator don't want her to have the kids,
mm.
and try to turn it around and make it seem like she's a bad parent or he's a bad parent.
Okay. Okay.
Making them feel like,
Mm-hmm.
look what you're doing to the children, and just using a lot of that
Mom.
emotional
Mm-hmm,
abuse, mind games,
mm-hmm,
you
mm-hmm.
know. And also another aspect is what I have seen in my practice is that sometimes, they will go and make a report and say they were abused
Wow. Okay.
and that the person abused them, and to try to take take away from what they have done and not take any responsibility for their behaviors.
Yes. Yes.
And so I've seen that where they've gone and told people, called the police, and they've done a protective order and on that person, just as that person has done toward them. So they do a lot of tit for tat type of stuff. So
Playing the playing the victim
yes.
themselves.
So if you're gonna hurt me, I'm gonna hurt you back.
Totally
And
in
yes.
dysfunctional. Totally dysfunctional. What about economic abuse that you've seen?
Oh yes. Oh, yes, I've had several clients where, it may have not been any physical, but the financial, where they have controlled all the money.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't, the victim doesn't even know where the money is, or, how much money the person has made. And that person cut them off completely. Like, if you're going to leave me, then, they take them off of. And it's not just like physical money. Sometimes they just take them off of their insurance and everything. So they lose health insurance,
Mm-hmm.
all of it. So it's a lot of different dynamics that come to play.
Mm-hmm.
And people just think that domestic violence is just physical. No, it's not.
Mhm.
There's a lot of different tiers to it.
Okay. And here, as we go around the wheel, there's male privilege, treating her like a servant, making her, making all
Yes.
big decisions and acting like the master of their castle. Kind of like, which, you've mentioned, tying in with the economic abuse there as well. This wheel is very important, and it's put out by the National Center on Domestic and Sexual Violence. Is there anything else on the wheel in particular before we leave it that you want to re-emphasize, Mia? Any particular?
A lot of, well, all of it's important.
Mhm.
And if you, in the dating aspect of the relationship,
Mhm.
if any of these come to fruition
Mhm.
for you, then that should be red flags. Because when I've talked to people, and like you stated, I give out this power wheel control to all my clients that come in,
Mhm. Mhm.
and most often they always look at it and they're like, oh my God,
Yeah.
this person fits in here perfectly.
It's an
And
eye opener.
yes, and like I said, a lot of times people didn't know, like in the dating aspect of the relationship,
Mhm.
that this person was doing this, and that was part of domestic violence.
Okay. Okay.
Because like I said, people think that it's all just physical, and people don't know that it is a combination of things.
Mhm.
And that, and being forced to have sex, you know, being forced to continue to have baby after baby, sometimes that's part of the domestic violence.
Mhm. Mhm. Key. All very key and important factors. So thank you for reiterating that information.
I've talked about the unhealthy. Let me give just a few points about what a healthy relationship looks like.
Please do.
Is that okay? Okay. So a healthy relationship means that both you and your partner are communicating,
Mhm.
have respect toward each other, have mutual trust with each other,
Mhm.
are honest with each other, and there's equality in the relationship, and you enjoy your personal time away from each other also. And that's what people don't understand, that in an unhealthy relationship, the person may not want you to be around your friends, your family, part of the isolation,
Yes.
keeping you away from other people. And so in a healthy relationship, that partner is not intimidated by your friends or family.
Women that have been able to and
Mm-hmm.
have been able to get out of such unhealthy relationships, what have you found in your practice helped most?
I think that it really comes down to being very strategic. And I also told one of my clients that I said that you were very strategic, and gave her praise for that, because a lot of times, you know, uh, when our men, they tell the perpetrator that they're going to leave them, you know
Mhm.
what I mean? And so, and that already escalates the situation,
Mhm.
versus
Yep.
being strategic about it, not telling that person that you're going to leave, and just start setting things in place, opening a, separate bank account,
Mm.
getting all your papers together, like having all your birth certificate, having all that stuff, because some people, when they leave, they have to leave fast, and they leave important documents, and
Mhm.
and that the perpetrator will not give them, so you
Yes,
can't get it after the fact. So it's
exactly.
best to try to have a little file, if you can, or a little thing that keeps your important papers in, especially when you have children.
Mhm.
Make sure you got all birth certificates, social security cards, you know,
Mhm.
um, and that's important. So it's really a strategic type of effort. And, uh, you know, just making sure you have a little bag somewhere, with some change of clothes. Because like I said, sometimes when people leave, they have to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to leave fast. And, a lot of times they come with nothing, to the shelters, even though the shelters are set up to, they get donations. So, they can always get the kind of basic needs at the shelter, but just making sure that if you have any money that you can put away, any of that.
Other specifics would you recommend that we haven't discussed here today? Anything that you think women and men should remember just generally as they're going through this difficult and challenging period, whether it's COVID or not? Because certainly, we had this, before COVID and after COVID, even once people, there's a vaccine, hopefully, in the future, and people are able to, resume normal activities. Do you have any words of advice, just generally, for men and women, and words of hope?
Yes. The main thing is knowing that it's not your fault. I think that's a big one. That's a big one. I've said that throughout the interview, that's a big one, but this is a big one too. Also, because a lot of guilt is on the victim, and they feel guilty for breaking up the family. They feel guilty for taking their kids from the other parent. They feel guilty for a lot of different reasons. And sometimes it's because of peers and family, telling them, well, you can, that's just how men are. That's how women are, or, just whatever, to make excuses for it. And there's no excuse for domestic violence. It's not something that you do. You are not in control of another person's behavior. That person makes a choice and chooses to respond the way they do. And a lot of abusers will say, you made me do this. If you hadn't did this, then I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have hit you. And that's not true. Don't feed into that. A person just wants to know they've been validated and that they are not crazy, because a lot of times that's been put in their head that they're crazy. So, as a friend or a peer or a family member, be supportive and don't shame the person if they want to stay, and don't shame them if they want to leave.
Thank you. Very important lessons that you've communicated here today that I think the audience can take with them and put to use. Is there an 800 number, or what resources in the community would you recommend?
There's a 1-800 number that's a national number that I think you can put on the screen for me.
Yes, here it is, sharing here, 1-800-799-SAFE.
Yes. So again, it's 1-800-799-SAFE. And if you're in the Indiana, if you're in the state of Indiana, you can call 211 in wherever county you're in and find out what shelter is in your area.
Okay.
For domestic violence.
Thank you.
So there is help out there. And also with the national number, they can find help in your area.
Ah, wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and being one of our voices of hope to help women and men that are going through domestic violence. We appreciate the information that you have provided. And certainly, if our audience have any questions, can we put them in touch with you? Would you be available to answer questions? Okay.
Yes.
Very good. Well, thank you. Thank you again today. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you. And
thank you.
You have a good rest of your day.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Hello, everyone, and welcome.